Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of depth. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, it truly means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment, you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I am alone. I tickle myself every time I say that. It's a little inside joke I have with myself. So, solo episode today, folks. Here's what I want us to talk about. I want us to talk about the importance of feeling all of the feelings, especially of the importance of pain and struggle in our life. Now, I'm a seemingly outward positive person. I talk all the time about the power of gratitude. I mean, the way I start this podcast. And so I think that sometimes I can give off the impression that I want all of us to constantly be and feel positive and happy, and no matter what, find something to be grateful for. And so I want to just talk a little bit openly and honestly about the role that pain and struggle and negative, quote unquote, negative emotions, that they are so important to me in my life. And if you're struggling with embracing them yourself, that let's have a conversation on this one. You know, someone was asking me the other day, and I'll do a podcast on this. What does it take to build a good team? And at the heart of that is relationships. And so let's zoom out beyond just building a good team. Everything is relationships with ourselves, with those we love, with those maybe we don't love, with those who annoy us, whatever it might be. It all comes down to relationships. And if you want to have healthy, strong relationships with yourself, with others, even with people who annoy you, it really comes down to, I have found, how willing are you to move through and to have and to start and to accept an invitation to difficult conversations. I have a TEDx talk, and I'm not just saying that to name drop, called Conflict is Good for You and Your Relationships. One thing I have found is that, let's say everything's going great with you and somebody else, and then all of a sudden an unwanted disagreement or conflict arises that genuinely makes everybody feel uncomfortable, hurt, upset. Now, if you are able to, with that person, move through that conflict in a beautiful way, in an empowering way, not necessarily, I'm saying clean, not smooth, not awesome, but in a way, when I say beautiful, where you're both willing to show up and really hear the other person out and try to understand where they're coming from and work through the ups and downs of it. If you're willing to do that, I find that there is actually more trust, more rapport, more love in the relationship, having now gone through this, than there was before. Now, I'm not saying go out and just start fights, but I am saying that I bet there is somebody you care about right now that you have been putting off a difficult conversation on. I notice I'm doing it when I start to gossip about somebody, under the guise, of course, of venting. Oh, I'm just venting. When instead of talking about that person to somebody else, I should be talking to that person and sharing the feelings that I am feeling when this interaction happened or happens. Now, of course, I understand power dynamics come into play. It's hard to do that if it's your boss, or if it's somebody who unfairly even has some sort of hierarchy in the situation, or where it create a safety issue for you. But for the most part, in our relationships, the safety issue is our fear that if we do bring this up, that they will reject the conversation and we will be at a crossroads in the relationship. Now, one thing that I have been reading a lot on and listening to different lectures, if you will, YouTube videos, is this idea of toxic positivity. So let me tell you what toxic positivity is if you haven't heard of it. This is a definition from Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, a clinical psychologist in Pennsylvania who specializes in many things, including anxiety disorders and self-esteem. So this is their definition. Toxic positivity is the assumption, either by oneself or others, that despite a person's emotional pain or difficult situation, they should only have a positive mindset, or, my pet peeve term, this is what Dr. Jamie Zuckerman is saying, positive vibes. So let's give some examples here. Let's say someone is going through a serious crisis and immediately we remind them, hey, there is probably something good in here. Hey, you should look for the upside. There's always an upside. What's the upside? Instagram culture definitely contributes to this. There is many people in the self-help community, in the guru self-help community, many personalities built around the toxic positivity culture. And I like to reflect upon, am I being an asshole? That is one of the questions I want to know. And so it hurts, but I love when people give me feedback on, yes, that is an asshole move, Tom. So I've been reading this to see where in my behavior do I possibly perpetuate toxic positivity. And like many things, toxic positivity has elements of whiteness linked to it, of privilege, of me being able to say, hey, it just takes hard work. It just takes merit. Get up early, exercise, work out, drink water, work on the thing you're passionate about. If you're in a job you hate, it's your fault. Take action in your life. Take accountability. And all those things on the surface are awesome. And they also assume a lot of privilege in there, that you have the same privilege as I do. If I, as a white guy, go in and talk to my boss and say, hey, boss, these are the things that are upsetting me, or this is what's going on, that I get the clout of and the safety of whiteness, male whiteness, where they're not going to have all of these assumptions that come up. What comes to mind for me that I think of is I was working somewhere and a boss disrespected myself and my coworker, who was a black woman. She still is, but we're talking about a story in the past, who is a black woman. So we came and said to the boss, hey, just want to be open and honest with you. Here's what you said. Here's what it felt like. Can you see where we're coming from? She was totally cool to me. She then moving forward, completely ignored my coworker who is black. Same thing happened to both of us. We both went to the boss and said the same thing at the exact same time together. And yet, for whatever reason, she was able to continue a relationship with me and appreciated the blunt honesty, and then ignored and severed her relationship with my coworker who's a black woman. And when we say for unknown reasons, we 100% know the reasons: white supremacy and racism. So this toxic positivity definitely has its links to there. And so I am always trying to be aware, because I know I have so many implicit, subconscious biases that I am perpetuating without even realizing it. So anytime I can get an opportunity to hold a mirror to that, I do. And so that's why I wanted to put out this episode with you, so we can talk about this. What I'm going to share with you is some of the reading, some of the reflections, and some stories, my own life, from other people's lives, that really illustrate the importance of being able to embrace the pain and not trying to, when the pain arises, think positive thoughts immediately. I know for me, when I first got into a lot of self-help and law of attraction stuff, there was a lot of energy around if I talk about, something negative, or if, let's say, for example, when I used to run this nonprofit with somebody. We were partners in it, and we really built this thing up. And once the company was finally successful, and we could all, it could become this success thing for us, and a big part of our lives where we've just been working to get this thing to even be successful. My partner had a secret meeting with the board members and ousted me from the company. One of those Betrayal, stabs in the back. This is somebody I consider to be family. It hurts so much. So I immediately went from having this job and health insurance to nothing. And so money became a huge stressor for me. And so I then would avoid talking or thinking about money because I had been told, if you think negative thoughts about something, it's going to perpetuate that thing. So only think positively and avoid things that make you feel negative. So that was an example for me where I know I started to embrace this. You can hear, if you're listening closely, you can hear how this argument of, oh, if you talk about racism, it just perpetuates it. If you talk about oppression, it perpetuates oppression. We should be talking about the solution, not the problem. So once again, you can see how these things are deeply linked. Here's what I have sensed, embraced, gotten clarity on in my life, is when we can learn to really allow ourselves to feel, especially the pain, when we can accept that this is part of our reality and remove the value judgment that because I am feeling negative emotions, because I am feeling pain, sadness, hurt, anger, depression, that I am somehow doing something wrong, that I am not manifesting, that I am not writing my own destiny, that I am falling into some sort of trap that will just perpetuate itself. And so when I start to try to rush out of that and feel good, usually what happens is it's just sweeping things underneath the rug. Oh, the room looks great. You know, where you have seen maybe a cartoon, I shove everything in the closet and my back's to it, holding the closet shut. And I'm like, this room's totally clean. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. Or maybe you've seen the meme, I don't know where it's from, of the little cartoon dog and the room's on fire and the dog says, everything's fine. You know, when I try to do that, that's not really positivity. That's wearing a mask. And wearing a mask never works. I remember one of the times where I was the most, just so much anxiety was when I was on paternity leave. I just had so much anxiety around going back to work. Was I going back to work too soon? There was just so much anxiety there. I just remember this. I remember on my birthday last year, I know I should have been feeling happy. See, this is I should have. This is even hearing my own language. My wife, my mom, my daughter, they were all there celebrating with me. And I just remember just feeling so heavy. And yet I was telling myself, you should feel good. And that friction that I shouldn't be feeling this way, it's wrong to feel this way, creates extra tension. And so I was listening to an Eckhart Tolle lecture, actually. And he was talking about how when you feel pain and negativity, don't fight it. Accept that it is your reality and lean into it. I feel like shit right now. I feel pain and anxious. And don't then say, and so now I need to feel happy. Just sit there and feel the feelings. And now I'm going to switch into my takeaway from that. And then even though I am feeling these feelings and they hurt, I'm no longer adding on to it this self-judgment that I shouldn't be feeling this. So I found for myself, when I just really just sit in it and say, this is my reality right now, and accept it, that it just makes it so much easier. So I'm reading Glennon Doyle's Untamed right now. If you have not read it, my friends, it is a tremendous book. Tremendous book. I highly recommend you get your hands on it. If you are reading, I have a couple friends and family who are reading it, and we like to screenshot and send each other our favorite quotes, or people who are reading the actual book, hard copy, take a picture, send it to me. I'd love to know what your favorite parts are. So I really resonated with the part in the book where Glennon Doyle was talking about her addictions. As somebody myself who has, for I would say my 18 to 26, that 10-year period where I went from one addiction to the next, alcoholism to anorexia to on and on, that I really resonated with her talking about this part of her book. Okay, so here we're jumping into the book, page 49. This was her at her first AA meeting. So she said, "I'm starting to worry that what was wrong with me wasn't the booze. It was underneath it. It was me. It doesn't seem like being alive is as hard for other people as it is for me. It just feels like there's some kind of secret to life I don't know, like I'm doing it all wrong. Thanks for listening." This is what she shared. Whew, I don't know about y'all, but when I heard that hit me. I know for myself, and I talk about this on another podcast, or I plan to talk about this on another podcast, where I just want to talk about that addiction, what's underneath it for a lot of us. And so this just hit me. So anyway, she shares then, she goes on in the book, "After the meeting ended, a woman walked over and sat down next to me, and she said, 'Thanks for sharing. I relate. I just wanted to tell you something that somebody told me in the beginning. It's okay to feel all of the stuff you're feeling. You're just becoming human again. You're not doing life wrong. You're doing it right. If there's any secret you're missing, it's that doing it right is just really hard. Feeling all of your feelings is hard, but that's what they're there for. Feelings are for feeling all of them, even the hard ones. The secret is that you're doing it right, and that doing it right hurts sometimes." Ooh, I was on a walk while I was listening to this. Had to pull over. By pull over, I mean sit my butt down and just absorb that. Wanted to share it with you. And I love, Glennon Doyle goes on. She says, "I did not know before that woman told me that all feelings were for feeling. I did not know that I was supposed to feel everything." Everything's in italics. "I thought I was supposed to feel happy." Happy's in italics. "I thought that happy was for feeling and that pain was for fixing and numbing and deflecting and hiding and ignoring. I thought that when life got hard, it was because I had gone wrong somewhere. I thought pain was weakness and that I was supposed to suck it up. But the thing was that the more I sucked it up, the more food and booze I had to suck down." Whew, damn, y'all. Whew, let's just read this part one more time. "I thought I was supposed to feel happy. I thought that happy was for feeling and that pain was for fixing and numbing and deflecting and hiding and ignoring. I thought that when life got hard, it was because I had gone wrong somewhere." Glennon Doyle just perfectly said in one paragraph what I have been rambling about to you all for the past, how long we've been in this game? Almost 18 minutes? Oh my gosh. I just love, and I want us to reflect upon in your own life. Just kind of go within this ability to self-reflect and see where this shows up in my behavior and mindset. The more we can strengthen that muscle, that's how you create transformation within yourself. That's how one paragraph can unlock doors. How many of us believe that if we're not happy, that we have gone wrong somewhere? That happy is what we're supposed to feel, and pain is something that you're supposed to fix, or numb, or deflect, or hide, or ignore. I know for me, that's where so much of my negative, see, I'm becoming self-reflective, negative. Let's say self-destructive behavior came from, is instead of feeling the feelings, trying to deflect, trying to numb them. So Glennon Doyle goes on to share that in the past 18 years, I have learned two things about pain. So I'm going to leave you to get this book. Get the book, folks. Untamed, Glennon Doyle. So she shares the first one, and I want you to go ahead and read that first one on your own. But the part here I'm going to read to us right here is her second one. So she says the second lesson she learned is I can use pain to become. Here's what she says about it. This is Glennon Doyle, page 51 on the Kindle edition. I am here to keep becoming truer, more beautiful versions of myself again and again forever. To be alive is to be in a perpetual state of revolution. Whether I like it or not, pain is the fuel of revolution. Everything I need to become the woman I'm meant to be next is inside my feelings of now. Life is alchemy, and emotions are the fire that turns me to gold. I will continue to become only if I resist extinguishing myself 1,000,000 times a day. If I can sit in the fire of my own feelings, I will keep becoming. I love that analogy of emotions are the fire that turns me to gold, and I will continue to become only if I resist extinguishing myself 1,000,000 times a day. Folks, I know that is tough, that the feelings can become so much, especially in a culture where we are so focused on performance that we don't want anything to get in the way of you being a performer. If you're at work and feelings come up, shut those feelings down because you got a deadline, or else. Or maybe you are a parent and the feelings come up that my partner, my children, they don't need these feelings of mine right now. They need the positive, shining face. What are the ways that we are extinguishing ourselves rather than letting let's read this again, emotions become the fire that turns us to gold? Okay, we're just going to read a couple more sentences here because I don't really know what is the line on how many sentences you can read before it becomes copyright infringement. So Glennon Doyle and your publishers, please forgive me if I have crossing into that line. Here we go. Glennon Doyle says, page 51, consumer culture promises us that we can buy our way out of pain, that the reason we're sad and angry is not that being human hurts. It's because we don't have those countertops, her thighs, these jeans. This is a clever way to run an economy, but is no way to run a life. Consuming keeps us distracted, busy, and numb. Numbness keeps us from becoming. Ooh, y'all, I can tell you as a marketing, I'm going to say the word expert, marketing expert, every single time I teach a marketing class, what I say to people is, you will get people to buy when you can speak to their emotions. That is why so many times we as marketers have to reflect upon how much of marketing is manipulation. It's a tough thing to think about. How much of sales is manipulation? Let us continue. This is Glennon Doyle, page 51. This is why every great spiritual teacher tells us the same story about humanity and pain. Don't avoid it. You need it to evolve to become, and you are here to become. We're going to run that back. I don't know if you've ever been to a spoken word event, but what they sometimes yell is rewind, and that means read it again. So I will rewind. This is why every great spiritual teacher tells us the same story about humanity and pain. Don't avoid it. You need it to evolve to become, and you are here to become. I'm going to continue. Glennon Doyle says, like Buddha, who had to leave his life of comfort to experience all kinds of human suffering before finding enlightenment. Like Moses, who wandered 40 years in the desert before seeing the promised land. Like Wesley from The Princess Bride, who said, and I love how she included this. What did Wesley say from The Princess Bride? Glennon Doyle tell us. He said, life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something. Like Jesus, who walked straight toward his own crucifixion. First the pain, then the waiting, then the rising. All of our suffering comes when we try to get to our resurrection without allowing ourselves to be crucified first. There is no glory except straight through your story. Oh my God, Glennon Doyle. Oh, I'm getting all teary-eyed and emotional over here. Y'all, come on. How do you not already have this book? We got to read that again. First the pain, then the waiting, then the rising. All of our suffering comes when we try to get to our resurrection without allowing ourselves to be crucified first. There is no glory except straight through your story. Oh my Lord. Yes. Alhamdulillah. Easier said than done, Tom. Easier said than done. Intention, awareness, though, when you can start to say to yourself, to give yourself permission to at least try something, that is when the journey of 1,000 steps begins with one. That's when we get there. It is a practice. But giving yourself permission to begin the practice, that's awesome. That is huge. So many times I have found that just starting, right? When you look at a blank page, just starting is all you need. This is amazing. Okay, so what I want to talk about next is Iptihaj Muhammad, another great book. Proud by Iptihaj Muhammad, Olympic medalist. She has a Barbie that has been modeled after her, and it is a Barbie that is wearing the hijab, so that's super awesome. Not that wearing a hijab or not makes you more pious, so I'm not judging. It's kind of, as a Muslim guy, is always, you got to be careful that you're not putting people on a pedestal or being the pious police. But I say it from a place of representation. That is super awesome. A black Barbie with a hijab. We got our nieces this Barbie for Christmas this year. Adora and I did. So that was really cool. Y'all, I remember I was going through a really tough time. I was at a workplace that the mission was awesome. I loved the people. I loved working with the people. And you can have this, a place where the people are amazing, the work is awesome, the impact is extraordinary, and it is a toxic place to be. It is a lonely place to be. My friends out there in the nonprofit world, I have a feeling that you know what I'm talking about, that the nonprofit world is just, because the mission is so important, we sacrifice our health, our relationships, we sacrifice the work culture. Oftentimes the inclusion and the caring and the brave spaces, all that is for those we serve, not for those we work with. And it was at a time where I would have to get up from my desk and go outside because I would feel tears coming in my eyes. And I started to read Iptihaj Muhammad's book. And I gotta say, y'all, if you are going through a tough time in your life, read this book. It is amazing what Iptihaj has gone through and her triumphs. Here's one of the huge things that I took away from Iptihaj Muhammad's book that is a lesson that we can all have. Oftentimes, especially those of us who are high performers or who are visionaries or who are on a quest, there we go, got it out. We envision that when we finally arrive at a pinnacle of success, that we will finally feel happy, that we will finally feel fulfilled and worthy, that people will finally treat us the way we deserve to be treated. Iptihaj Muhammad had to work harder than probably almost anybody in the game to make the Olympic U.S. national team. Worked so hard. She was at Duke, experienced continuous and constant racism, macro and microaggressions. She shares in the book how people thought it would be funny to ask her and the only other black member of the team if they like fried chicken and watermelon. She shares a story in the book. One time they went to a Crackle Barrel, the team. This was the Duke College fencing team. They went to a Crackle Barrel as a team. They all went up as a team to be seated, and the hostesses seated her and the other member of the team who was black at their own table away from the team because they just didn't even think, they didn't even conceive, oh, you're on this team, because to be a fencer is to be white. So all of this, you got to read the book. Crazy stories. Finally makes it. She gets on the team, and arrives at this pinnacle, and what happens? Her coach, her teammates are racist assholes. These are my words, not her words. But if you read the book, you'll find out. I mean, can you imagine? I know one of my dreams to be a #1 song in the world. So I get there, there's this part of myself I'm saying, when I get there, all these unfulfilled parts of myself will be fulfilled. And what happens? I get there and everybody is a jerk. Constant attacks, this constant pressure. So think for yourself, what is something that is a goal that we are attaching our worthiness to? Once I achieve this goal, I will then be happy. Once I achieve this goal, I will then feel worthy. I will prove to everybody. Y'all, that's a slippery slope to depression and to being let down. You are worthy right now. You don't have to accomplish anything to be worthy. Okay, this is a little bit of a side tangent. So all that to say, you got to get the book. So I want to read to you a little bit of her talks on anxieties. So we are going to start on page 172. This is in Iptihaj Muhammad's book, Proud. Please, 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 please get this book. At least page 172 in the Kindle edition I'm reading. So here we go. She finally talks about being on Team USA and going to one of the tournaments. So here we go. The tournament was going to officially start in 1 hour. I was going through the motions of my warm-up, but all I was really doing was fighting the urge to curl up in a corner somewhere and take a nap. The thing was, I had gotten plenty of rest on the flight from the States and had a good night's sleep the night before. I knew I wasn't sleep deprived, yet the feeling of fatigue was overwhelming me, and the desire to go to sleep was so strong. It took every fiber in my being not to give into it and take a nap right there on the strip. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. I forced myself into a longer warm-up routine than normal, including some basic calisthenics and my usual stretching routine, but I couldn't shake the fatigue I was feeling. In fact, I had this strange sensation like someone was pouring warm water over me. I could feel it wash over my body, starting from my temples all the way down to the tips of my toes, and I just felt so tired, almost too tired to fence. I glanced up at the clock and realized I only had 30 more minutes before my first bout, and I was sitting on the ground feeling like a sloth. This was so unlike me. It felt strange. Somehow I had to push through this feeling and get on the strip. The same thing had been happening to me for the last couple of competitions, and I knew once I started fencing, the fatigue would eventually fade as swiftly as it had come. But once the bout was over, another tidal wave of exhaustion would hit me. Since saber, which is the type of fencing that Iptihaj Muhammad is the expert at, is all about speed and explosive energy, feeling so lethargic before every competition was distressing. I didn't know if the problem was a physical or mental, so I wasn't sure where to turn for help, and I worried about telling my coach and the other members of my team. We're going to read a little bit more on what happens here. So we're at page 173, but I wanted to share this because how many of us have experienced these physical manifestations of our emotions? I mean, I'm giving some of it away, what she's going to share next, where she's talking about how this is actually anxiety. Our bodies oftentimes will communicate to us our emotions. And yet, going back to our toxic positivity, if we try to mask it and judge ourselves for what's happening and switch right away into just be positive, just exercise, just get some more sleep, which not saying those things are bad, those things will help. But if we try to mask our discomfort, our pain with positivity, it'll go unaddressed. And so let's talk about how it gets addressed. Page 173, Iptihaj Muhammad, Proud. Sometimes the universe conspires to help those in need. This was one of those occasions. While I was in the midst of having another abnormal attack of fatigue, the United States Olympic Committee assigned us an official team psychologist, Jamie Harshaw. It was one of the perks of being on the national team that I never knew about. Jamie met with each team member individually for a basic psychological evaluation and checkup. When it was my turn to meet with her, my issues of battling pre-competition fatigue was at the top of my list. After breaking down exactly what I had been feeling, it was she who suggested that perhaps what I was experiencing was anxiety manifesting itself as fatigue. Where other people may hyperventilate or feel faint when having a panic attack, my anxiety essentially caused high levels of tiredness, leaving me feeling incredibly drained. Jamie's assessment made total sense considering my experience with this was recent and only happened at competitions. Perhaps the anxiety stemmed from a fear of failure, or maybe even the perceived catastrophic consequences of not meeting my own expectations. To deepen the weight on my back was the disapproval of my teammates, who were less than forgiving when I lost a point or didn't measure up to their expectations. I realized I had been suffering from performance anxiety in the moments before competing and had to learn how to manage these anxieties and disarm some of the triggers. You know, this brings up for me how many of us are experiencing the physical manifestations of our emotions that we have been ignoring, burying, trying to deflect, but we don't necessarily have access to a team psychologist. And of course, this is not saying, oh, of course you have a team psychologist, Iptihaj Muhammad. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying to give yourself grace, to not shy away from the pain, to feel the feelings, that admitting or naming or vocalizing that I am feeling this way physically because of the emotional feelings that are going on inside of me. When we have toxic positivity rush us into, I must feel good now all of the time, we don't ever get a chance then to move into even addressing it. And that's what in the book Iptihaj goes on to talk about, how the mantras and meditations and exercises and things that she would do to address it. But if we don't address it, if we don't name it, if we don't allow ourselves to feel, we can't ever move into that space. My friends, I know for myself the times in my life where I have, instead of running away from, I ran inwards and embraced the pain, embraced the struggle, and just really just named it. That it allowed for me to breathe and to sit in the silence. And that is why I paused and had that silent space there, because so often we're trying to look for the right words to say, the right thing to do, and instead just sit with it and see what the silence can teach you. And I've often found that that leads to my greatest growth, and as Glennon Doyle says, my greatest becomings. My friends, all of us are going to have different ways we process. I know meditation is pushed hard. For me, my way that I sit in the feelings is I go for walks and I clean. Those are my ways I do it. I go for walks and I clean. So don't try to force yourself into how to sit with it. Whatever works for you. And don't try to become the expert at sitting in the pain. Don't take this to that level where, well, if I'm going to sit in the pain, I'm going to be the best at sitting in the pain. Just be gentle with yourself. Do this one with grace. And as Iptihaj Muhammad demonstrated, a psychologist, a counselor, social worker, therapy, all awesome things if that is something that you are able to have access to. My friends, this was an interesting one to record with you. A vulnerable episode for sure. If there's anything that I shared that resonates with you, it would mean the world to me if you let me know. Tom@tomearl.com or @TomEarlArtist is all of my social. Y'all are the best. Go ahead and get yourself Glennon Doyle's Untamed book and Iptihaj Muhammad's Proud book. Both of them, I promise, will serve you. I appreciate the heck out of all of you. My invitation to you all is to become self-aware of the times where, like Glennon Doyle says, we extinguish our own fire of emotions. And when you do become self-aware of it, don't judge yourself. Don't let it become a I did something wrong game. Instead, just become aware, because awareness allows us to then move through life in a conscious rather than subconscious way. So that's my invitation. Start there and have grace with yourself. My friends, I appreciate the heck out of all of you. And as always, I'm wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.